Buenas tardes, bienvenidos, bienvenidas, bienvenides a la última de las 3 series de desarrollo profesional organizadas por el CFDA y ELLE Magazine en el marco del mes de la herencia hispana en los Estados Unidos. Welcome to the last of the 3 series of professional sessions organized by the CFDA and ELLE Magazine in observation of Hispanic Heritage Month in the United States. Today, I have a privilege to be moderating this session where we will engage in a conversation about production sustainability and the intersection of heritage with sustainable systems and environmental justice, where we will learn from the experience of 5 inspirational creators and change makers. The first part of this session will be centered on our panelists' participation, and towards the second part, we will open up the panel for Q&A from our audience. We invite everyone to make questions using our Q&A window function. We would also like to remind everyone that this panel will be recorded and made available both as a video and a transcript in the CFDA website, cfda.com, where you can also find the recordings of the 2 additional sessions as part of the series, as well as other resources for those of us participating in the local, regional, and international fashion systems. To introduce this session today, I want to share the following. As I was biking to work, traveling from the north of Brooklyn to the east of Manhattan, I looked up at a new massive fashion advertisement that showed the image of a model wearing what I recognized as a poncho. This beautiful rectangle, sleeveless tunic type of woven structure that generally covers the top part of the body, and the way in which it is performed and presented in such scale immediately captured my attention. Me invade con un sentimiento de casa. It brings me home. Home for me first is Peru, a country in the south of this, our America, one that limits with Bolivia, Ecuador, Colombia, Chile, and Brazil, one in which ponchos are culturally embedded in our everyday experience, history, and sense of belonging. Ponchos are heritage. They carry stories of community, resilience, and thought, and are wearable sources of information and tradition. As I look at this image, questions of heritage, context, authorship, materials, and processes of making pop into my head. I learned later that the image I saw belongs to Chloé's campaign for the Autumn-Winter 21 collection by Gabriela Hearst. That this photograph was taken in Mexico by Zoe Gertner, and that the piece I identified was in fact a puffjo, a modern combination of a down puffer insert and a cashmere poncho, as described on Chloé's Instagram. The piece is a nod to Gabriela's Hearst's roots. This image captures the nature of our conversation today, one that connects heritage to other key issues amongst Latinx working in the fashion systems in the United States. Today, we have the honor to briefly learn, because sadly we have only 1 hour, about the processes of creation, making, and change from the experience of Lisa Morales-HELLEBO, co-founder and GP of REFASHIOND Ventures, CARMEN, designer and production manager at Eileen Fisher Renew and co-founder of Make ANEEW, Gabriela Hearst, founder and designer of Gabriela Hearst and creative director of Chloé, who will also have to leave a few minutes before ending our session, ARTURO CASTAñEDA, founder of Storytellers and Creators, and Carmen Busquets, fashion, tech, beauty entrepreneur, inventor, and advisor. I want to welcome all of you to this session, as well as all who are joining us as participants of this session. And to introduce you, I would like to ask each one of you one first question. If you were to consider the idea of place or territory, where would you say your work comes from, and how is that relevant to the work you make or produce? Lisa, would you like to jump in?
Unmute. I'll start. I love this question because I realized everything in my life and in my career ties to roots in my childhood. and I am a Puerto Rican American, New Yorican by birth, and didn't really have a deep connection to my heritage until I was much older, and returned to my island and fell in love with it, and the people and the culture and the music and the food and the dance and everything. So for me, I've lived a duality, like everyone, I'm sure, on this panel, of being an American and Latina. Um, Puerto Rico, my family comes from pig farmers and seamstresses on the island, and sewing is in our genes, in our blood, and it absolutely is something that I was obsessed with since childhood and wove my career back to lead me back to this space because it is also the space that impacts probably brown women around the globe more than any, and realize that true power comes not only in creativity, but in deploying capital and getting to decide what gets to exist on this planet. So I've been building, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been building things to disrupt the status quo around this supply chain for apparel.
Thank you so much. I will ask the same question to Carmen. Sorry, Carmen Gama, excuse me.
Estoy en mute. Carmen, this one. Okay.
No, you can go first. That's fine.
We have two Carmens today.
Okay, should I go? Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with all of you sharing this space. For me, it means home too. It's like Lisa. For me, it just means home, my family, Mexico, all of the values that my parents gave me as a kid and as a teenager, because I was born and raised in Mexico. I came here when I graduated from high school. I was raised in a family that it was very much instilling us the value of waste, how to be very conscious about waste, but both from an environmental perspective to a financial perspective. It's like, don't waste energy, don't waste water, don't waste food, both because, it's money that it will get thrown out, but the other one is like, we're taking resources from the planet. So that's basically how I grew up, and it really never clicked to me until I actually came to the United States and I started, studying and working in the industry and finding about the amount of waste that this industry produces. So that's very quickly when I was like, I need to start using my design skills, right, to start creating and really pushing for new systems that will address the waste issue that this industry faces. So right now I'm both working for Eileen Fisher Renew and Waste No More, trying to figure that out. But I'm also, I co-founded a company, Make ANEEW, that will help companies address the, post-consumer waste that you can't resell. But that's how my heritage is really embedded on me.
Thank you. Gabriela?
I grew up in a rancho, very similar experience to Carmen. It's the same place where my family's lived for 170 years in Uruguay, in South America. And you grew up conscious of electricity because we were out of the grid. Basically, we didn't have electricity, so you had 2 hours of a generator that would go out at night, and that was the chance you could read at night or you read during the day. And you saved everything, and I learned about quality, and I learned about sustainability from a utilitarian perspective. So it really, and also when you're in a place that the closest city is 2 hours and a half away, you learned a lot of survival instincts too. If you have an accident, what to do. But I also learned, and I think we all share that, I think Latin culture has a huge appreciation to beauty. And I think that beauty probably is what drawn us all here to the fashion industry, because it's a way where we communicate the beauty that we see, and we enjoy adorning ourselves. And my mother didn't have a large wardrobe. It was a very short wardrobe, but it was made with this family seamstress, so things were very cared for. So it was very much, I learned everything that I apply in my professional life back home. And also I learned the importance, and I think this conversation and this panel is so important, and thanks for having me, is the fact that the strength of Latin America united. Every single prócer, caudillo, leader, Bolívar, San Martín, Artigas, Martí, the last liberator in Cuba that was a poet, they all dreamed of a united America. They all, because they knew how powerful we would be if we were all united and we would put our difference, and it was about the unification of our Americas. And I think that that's very much present in the work that we're doing now at Gabriela Hearst, to really, as Carmen says, it's all Latin America, North, Center, and South. We're all one. And I think it's very important to show our differences, but also what unify us.
Thank you. Thank you. Arturo?
So as far as heritage in my life, I think, I was raised by a single mom, 6 kids, and my mom herself was a seamstress, and she, raised us in both countries. And everything I do today, it ties back to my past and my upbringing. My mom, even how I learned English and how I got to where I am today is because of her. And, I'm 5th generation in the industry, I would say. My mom was a seamstress, her mother, her great-grandmother, and so on. So it kind of fell on me. My mom worked at a sweatshop, and she, it was very difficult for her. And I remember sleeping by the machine and her sewing, tough times, in Mexico. And then she did work in a factory in the US, and there was no difference in the conditions. So, I always said the day I get to do this on my own, I will do things different. I would look at how I wanted my mother to be treated. I wanted the respect that she deserved as a creator and a talent. And I'll say this, my mom is, and I've worked with a lot of amazing designers, Mr. Lauren and what have you across the spectrum, but my mom is still the greatest. She is the best at what she does. And, I still learn from her. But if you come to my facility, you will see that it's different. It's more of a hybrid design center where, we don't hire seamstress or tailors, we hire creators and makers. And, we value the individual. And for us, my team comes first, and then the client. And, we do make beautiful garments, and but that just is a byproduct of who we, that's not who we are. We are as much greater than the product that we produce. And as far as my brand as well, I've only done special pieces for red carpets and such, but I'm getting ready to launch my own completely. I feel like it's been a while, and I'm ready for that. So you will see my heritage in there as well,
Thank you. Carmen Busquets?
For me, my background, like all of you, it was very important. Also, sustainability-wise, I grew up in Venezuela, but also I think one thing that we have, all Latin American, is resilient, and the fact that we welcome other cultures. Venezuela, we all know, that have been, was one of the fastest growing country in Latin America during the 50s and the 60s. And so I was lucky to grow on a country that was very rich and was receiving a lot of immigrants. I think that helped me to appreciate, and that also motivate my parents to make us more rooted, and not get spoiled or be entitled, And so we travel to a lot of places where we will be supporting local craftsmanship. And for my mother, that was a sociologist and anthropologist coming from Cuba, for her was very important to support always local art in Venezuela. and the craftsmanship and designers, cars that were done there. There was not such a question about importing goods until our economy was strong. That was a huge thing for me. And also the fact that in Venezuela, we grew up loving our father of democracy, Simón Bolívar. So we believe always in a united Latin America. You know, we always kept dreaming about that. And he was considered the father of democracy for many years. So, and he believed in inclusivity, equal rights. You know, he respected women in his movement. So I felt always that there was not much difference between people, you know, and how, although our world was a huge place, you know, we still needed to be always thinking about local first, you know. So it's macroeconomy, but if we don't take care of ourselves in a microeconomy way, we cannot subsist in a global, in a sustainable world. So as I grew up, I only aligned with people that will be having the same kind of principles that I had. And well, sometimes you get lucky and you meet the right people, and sometimes you're not. But for me, that's, I always say I would not grow to be like Simón Bolívar, the richest man on the cemetery, or the richest woman in the cemetery, but I will have the most experience, you know. And I think America brings us a lot of experiences, and the more united we all become as one, it will be, we will be stronger. So that's why I was saying North America is important, as Central America is important, as South America is important. So I would like to see that more in a united way.
I see our heads shaking a lot, so I think we are all under shared agreements. And today is about you folks sharing a little bit in, or going a little bit into each one of your practices, and how is it that a lot of these topics and conversations that we greatly talk about at the industry level in the context of our practice are addressed, and how is it that you interiorize this through your own work in terms of sustainability, in terms of heritage, in terms of even thinking about heritage in the context of Latin America and America and Latin Americanness, etc. So I would like to begin asking a first question for one of our panelists, for Gabriela. What do you think we need to do as fashion practitioners to transmit the importance of sustainability within our industry? What are some of the key ideas that we keep on perhaps on missing regarding sustainability as a sector?
I think that, you know, I still, I get asked the question why sustainability is important for me. And I always answer, is survival important to you? Because we're talking right now about survival. We have limited natural resources. This is globally taking us to a place of tribalism. We know what climate injustice looks like. We spent with the summer that we just saw in the developed countries, meaning Europe and the US. But this type of climate catastrophe has been happening in the developing world. And when they happen in, let's say, Europe and the US, the floods, the fires, you know that there's trauma, there's loss of life, there is economical impact. But when they happen in the developing world, it set back progress for years. The kids don't have access to school, no access to nutrition, no access to health. And so this is where we are right now. We're really facing the darkest hour. We used to be able to talk in a matter of years, and now we're talking in a matter of months. If we globally, we do not really find in the next 12 to 18 months an accord, like the accord where I grew up in South America. In the 70s, we didn't use sunblock, and I'm fair skinned because of my dad's side, they're Italian immigrants. And so I had basal cells because the ozone layer was very thin. And globally, there was a pact to rehabilitate the ozone layer. So that was done in conjoinment. So I believe that we still have a moment to really do this. People forget that it was George W. Bush that was supposed to rectify the Kyoto Agreement. It's been decades that we know what the issue is, and we're finally at the moment that if we don't do, we're looking at really the potential and most certain elimination of our species from this planet. So I think that this is something that, this is my industry, this is the industry that some sort of how I'm kind of good at. And so I have to use everything that I have, my platform, my voice, my making power, whatever I have to really convey the messages, as we are all catalysts of this movement. And again, with the same concept of unity. Unity will take us out of this, thinking together and pushing us through. And so yes, we're in a pivotal moment of our humanity, and I'm still hopeful. Let's put it this way, even if the math is against us, but the math is always against us. We're not even supposed to exist because there's more dark matter in the universe than matter. So I'm still hopeful that there's going to be a change of minds very quickly in order to be able to rescue and rehabilitate the power that nature has to heal themselves. And Costa Rica, as Carmen knows very well, is a good example of that.
Yes. La esperanza es lo último que se pierde. The hope is the last thing that gets lost. Yes, thank you so much, Gabriela. And thinking about alternatives, perhaps we segue into Carmen Gama. What is that alternative approach that we should seek when building or pushing for alternative fashion systems today? Has this changed over time? How have you experienced that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's two things that I would love to see that we collectively, like as an industry, we really push forward. And one is companies and brands and designers really start pushing for circular design, right? That would be one. The other one will be like for us to start creating like a post-consumer supply chain that really addresses all of the waste that we are seeing right now in our world. And the reason why I'm talking about these two is because one, if you start talking about circular design, how the garments are made, what are the materials that they're made, what are the trims, how they're constructed, who's making these, the more you're planning for these and really start embedding, ideas for second, third, or fourth life, right? The less waste that we're going to start generating and the less resources we're going to start grabbing from the environment, right? So you're addressing both waste and more resources for the people to actually consume them, right? So that's kind of one on the design part from the very beginning of the supply chain. And the second one that I'm talking, and that it's really what I'm really passionate about it, is like the post-consumer supply chain that I keep really ranting about it, right? It's like right now we're seeing a boom about companies embracing resale, right? And that's something that has been changing over the time, right? Before, like companies were like resale, no, like secondhand garments, but now like brands are really wanting to do this on their own, right? Or like partner with companies that they're doing that. But what we're not talking about on a bigger scale is like, what about that 50-60% of garments that cannot be resold, right? That is what people are calling it waste. I'm calling it resources, right? So that's where I'm like really focusing about from both the Eileen Fisher part, because that's kind of my job here. How do we address all of the unsellable inventory that it comes back from our take back program? And we have a couple solutions. We do have the Waste No More program. We do felt and goods and all of that. but also not just from an Eileen Fisher perspective. What about all the other brands that don't have the resources and knowledge or the experience like Eileen Fisher? So that's why I also co-founded Make ANEEW, because I want to be able to offer these companies the solutions for that, right? So that's kind of like the two things that I would really love to push. And of course, things have been changing. You know, there's a couple people in the space, you know, the Renewal Workshop who've been doing this for a couple of years that they're like amazing. Recircle, you know, there's a lot of platform like Tersis Solutions, which is like a waterless CO2, you know, machine technology that is like also helping companies to do resale programs. But anyway, so those are my two really things that I would love for the company to push from the design perspective and also addressing waste.
Thank you so much. Lisa, in your opinion, what does it mean to be truly disruptive of fashion systems today? How does that look like?
I love this question. I have been called a disruptor throughout my career, and I finally learned to embrace it and love it because disruption is a catalyst for change. And that is truly what we need, as Gabriela has said, as Carmen has said, as everyone has realized, we need catalysts for change. And so that has been my focus for the last, let's see, probably 12 years of my 27 years in tech. I'm a builder and I like innovating and building things from the ground up. And I really, after founding the New York Fashion Tech Lab, talking to the C-suite of all the major brands and retailers behind closed doors for a year, I realized the industry is not currently incentivized to change. Their inertia is so great, and their C-suite executives are incentivized to get their bonus, and they jump jobs every 2 to 3 years, don't really care if the company they happen to be working for at the moment goes under in 5. And so it kind of pissed me off. And I do a lot of things because I get pissed off. So I left after the first cohort to study the apparel supply chain for a year and really did a deep dive on my own dime to understand what is so broken on all sides. Why are we overproducing so much and have so much dead stock? So we've addicted humankind to fast fashion. Given even with the 2030 deadline, we had 10 years. That's still not enough time to change human behavior. So how do we make the addiction to fast fashion not kill our planet? So really 3 sides of this equation and applied design thinking to it, tied it back to things I had done in Silicon Valley 20 years prior, where I was fortunate enough to pioneer the space of mass customization, personalization, and on-demand micro-manufacturing for Procter & Gamble. And so having these insights, put my design thinking hat on and came up with the only solution I believe we should all be putting our time, energy, and resources behind, and that is localization of an automated, sort of distributed, collaborative network of on-demand micro manufacturing facilities here in the US and then spreading around the world. Did a deep dive of talking to all the people in the industry, and it was Ed Lam, the global CFO at Li & Fung, that said, my dear, this absolutely is the future. Nobody else is really doing it because it requires collaboration. So I've spent the last 7 years of my life getting that collaboration and buy-in, and we're about to deploy our HQ in Queens, and we have been working with the Gerber Innovation Center, with Kornit Digital, with other huge tech companies, and did our pilot at New York Fashion Week for on-demand post-purchase with Maria Inscher-Aurang, the former head of design at Vera Wang, Calvin Klein, Eden, and Alexander McQueen, and we connected her with an emerging street artist and created a custom graffiti print to reinterpret her design. So we've thought through every angle of how this industry should and could be disrupted and are offering it up as a service for brands much like Gabriela and Eileen Fisher.
Thank you so much for sharing. I want to just quickly announce that Gabriela, in fact, has to leave as you're about to present a new collection in 2 days. We want to thank you once again for participating. If there are specific questions from our audience at the end, maybe in the future, we can follow up on those as well. So we're just saying goodbye to Gabriela, who has to leave right now, but we will continue with the session.
Go back to few things, but thank you so much for having me, and it was an honor to be here and share the time with you guys. Bye, Carmencita, I love you.
I love you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Well, thank you, Lisa, again. Now I would like to ask Arturo, how would you say the role of branding within fashion systems as processes of representing identities changed in the last decade, and where do you believe we're headed today?
Yeah, so I mean, in that fashion system, you know, we always talk about art, commerce, and consumption, and I think production is always kind of left out. If we look back at, you know, we look at vintage garments, you always see tags that had a factory attached to it, and that was a sign of like luxury. And you know, they brands wanted to associate and say, hey, it was made at this facility because it's sustainable, it's because it's best made, it's, you know, the quality, and there was some sort of pride there, you know, for a label to be placed, you know, manufactured by. And today it's, you know, designers are hesitant to even say where the clothes was made, and the industry is pushing that. And I think as far as identity and awareness, you know, I think now that there's like an open, you know, men like Virgil who have really opened doors for a lot of us, it has given us the opportunity to kind of say, hey, and I see that in a lot of young designers who say, I work with such facility, or I go here, and there's a little bit of more inclusion on that production side. And I think the more we show that, because if I look at art, commerce, and consumption, yes, we see that we see marketing and trends have changed and included more people of color in them. But you never hear of, like, you know, when you think of production, you automatically think of, you know, places in Latin America and places in Asia, you know, or even Europe. But, you know, you don't get that exposure of, you know, who's making the clothes or who's not. I think with this new wave of designers, you're beginning to see that there is a collaborative with others. And, you know, I do foresee, you know, and it's like, it's even this session to me, I was a little bit torn whether to do it or not, because I get a call from the CFDA for Hispanic Heritage Month, but I don't get a call for throughout the year. So, you know, it's kind of a tough, you know, and I'm just brutally honest when it comes to that, because, you know, I guess, you know, we need a Hispanic on there. So, but I think awareness is good, and I think it's going to, I think as it begins to evolve, you'll see more people that look like us and, you know, other minorities. You know, it's, you know, I think production has a lot of color in it that hasn't been showcased and valued the way it should be. You know, I'm proud of my team. We're 95% Latinos from almost every country represented. And, you know, I know the value that I hold in these people and, you know, this team. And, you know, I hope that the trend continues that way, and say the garment is made here, transparency, you know, we're in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and, you know, great place to work at. And it's a healthy environment. There's windows all around. It's just, you know, just a different approach. And I see that already.
Thank you. Thank you, Arturo. Carmen Busquets, what would you say are the main drivers of change for fashion systems across the world today? And which ones are those specifically affecting fashion systems in America? What drivers for change are you most excited about today, and why?
Okay, and I think they are the obvious ones that we are talking about, you know, sustainability, diversity, gender equality. But I also should add that when we talk about sustainability, we should always think about sustainability and building companies in a way that are more efficient. You know, people tend to forget, and they think about sustainability only about what is important for our earth. And, you know, there is also, I have seen many companies that they have been built in an unsustainable way. It's ironic that that is all women entrepreneurs that we have been successful in building the most revolutionary companies on technology and e-commerce and to the 21st century. And none of us have gone to the stock market with them, you know? And when also, you know, I think gender equality is also very, very important in our agenda. A lot of people think that there is already a gender equality. There is not when it comes to all genders across, and also about profession-wise, you know, trying to give more a place, and that's about the need of creative ideas and disruptive ideas. You know, a lot of people, when, you know, we start talking about this, you know, meeting all of you, I ask all of you who have felt, you know, that they don't respect, you know, your opinions because you come from a creative world. And while a lot of people take for granted that the fact that you are creative, you know, you're working with the two sides of your brain, you know, and actually we are needed, many of us, that we use both sides of our brain to be, you know, the person that glue companies together. I've been amazed about how many companies, you know, they have been my fellow, you know, investors, that they are in finance, and they grow, they ask about growth into the companies, but they don't even look up, and they don't even know how to calculate efficiency. They don't even know how, in our operational business, we need to look at the cost of things, you know, and the people that are working in it, you know. So we are building companies that are bigger but less efficient. So, but women, for example, we don't have that luxury, because women, we need to build companies that are sustainable, that they grow, you know, but they also grow in cash, and that they grow in profit, because no woman can afford to have a company that is successful and no profit. So I'm very looking forward to see all these changes coming through, but I'm also looking forward to see more women building companies that they are taking all this into consideration when it comes to acquisition companies, and that they give opportunity to all kinds of, all genders in an inclusivity way. You know, not always to the male. Men tend to trust men with financial background. You know, they have to start trusting, and there is the track record on the 21st century that we have built very successful companies, and they're all going to go to the stock market without the entrepreneurs that started them. So I'm looking forward to see more women in this area, and more men, more creative people, and more disruptive thinkers. And Latins, of course, and everybody from all the cultures, you know, needless to say, with accents.
I think we all agree on that. And please, to our panelists, feel free to jump in as well. One of not only a concept, but a very much needed conversation and topic that we definitely need to continue thinking about, working towards, and addressing is representation, right? As well of how do we actually accurately participate in significant ways in developing and strengthening the community of practitioners, makers, entrepreneurs that identify as well within Latinx heritage through their work as well. How are we going to, or what type of conversations are we having? What type of dialogues are we strengthening in terms of dialogues between the Americas, South, North, Center? How much do we get even to share or to to share our work, to engage in collaboration within other countries in this region too. And perhaps more like, yes, Lisa.
Yeah, one comment I'd love to make is that with localization, it really has forced us to look at, you know, our supply chains or demand chains being sourced within the contiguous Americas. Because, you know, a year ago, a container from China cost $1,000, and now there's bidding wars up over 40,000 for the same box. That's not even knowing how much it'll cost or when or if it'll actually reach the port or be taken off of the cargo. So we are truly looking at the opportunities within the contiguous Americas and our heritage of being makers. You know, our culture, we are creatives, we are creators, and we are seamstresses and weavers and growers. And that is a huge asset and resource that we have that we can capitalize on across the contiguous Americas and even with Native and Indigenous peoples here within the United States. I know that in Arizona, they're putting a huge push behind helping the Indigenous people within that region to reclaim weaving and made in the USA textiles, which I applaud.
I think there is a question from somebody, you know, from
Yes.
Sonali Zulu,
Yes.
about the role of ancient indigenous knowledge system, oneness with nature and the environment in the fashion forward social media first world. I am coming from the point of the so-called dispossessed people. You know, it's interesting that Gabriela is not here, because she's doing actually a collection with indigenous and Native Americans here in United States, and working with them. And I do think there is more and more a place, because actually we do need, you know, more that kind of knowledge from the craftsmanship. You know, that's one of the things that I mentioned before. You know, we always love while we were traveling, helping, you know, in the, different craftsmanships and cultures. And as you know, Cuba, you know, what you work with, build a nest, you know, I think that would be a great place also to work with them, you know. So for Solani Zulu, I will recommend trying to get in touch with this kind of companies, non-profit companies, or actually be more active about approaching designers for projects, you know. And unfortunately, designers are very busy. So sometimes it's somebody from the craftsmanship or from an indigenous background approach to the designers, they actually actively work with them, like the way Gabriela did. Somebody approached to her, you know, she was already working with craftsmanship, but she added products in order to work with this new community in America. So I really will ask people that they are working on communities of craftsmanship to actually reach out sometimes to designers, you know, because designers don't have time to look in or travel to the amazing places where they all live, you know.
There's actually a new platform called Wear Well, W-E-A-R, Well, and it's for sustainable designers, craftspeople from around the world. They're helping them get a platform and doing all of the sustainability vetting and criteria. They offer a subscription service, so think of it as like Stitch Fix, but sustainable.
Yeah, thank.
Oh, you're muted, Lucia.
Sorry, Carmen, Gama, did you want to add something to that as well? I saw your mic going off. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
no, very quickly. I think you know, when we're talking about all like, you know, using craft or like ancient techniques, you know, I'm thinking about what Lisa was saying, like localization. How do we use what we have around us, right? But a lot of that craft is kind of like dying on older generations, and it's not being encouraged in younger generations. So I don't have an answer for these, but how can the government, or how can us designers, or like, how can we start like making, like giving awareness to younger generation? This is actually okay, and it's beautiful to learn the craft that your parents did for a long time, you know? So, I mean, it's really hard to find amazing sewers lately, right? It's like that generations of sewers, they're retiring. It's so how do we preserve that craft? How do we preserve that tradition passed from culture, you know, from generation to generation? And one of the things is like, you know, we see the views that we give these people, right? We don't pay them enough for the craft that they do. So why would the younger generations would want to learn that, knowing that they're not going to be valuable for what they're doing? So it's a whole question mark about, you know, it's like, how do we preserve these, but at the same time, are we fair to them, you know? But that's something that I was thinking while we were all talking about these.
Well, as an educator in the fashion systems as well, we sadly play a dramatic role in perpetuating these structures of power where design is approached from a very vertical perspective, where craftsmanship is almost separated or completely divorced as a foundation of even of cloth. We barely speak about that when we think about fashion too, or artisanal work, indigenous knowledge, even of textile making systems are very much left as a separate conversation from the processes that we at the industry level tend to talk about. I think it definitely, we for sure agree, or I agree at least, that we do definitely need to disrupt what we consider as the ways in which we normalize these structures, right? I mean, I think each one of you from its own area of work and agency understands that creating your own system, your community, the ways in which you build with one another and support your processes allows you to navigate using as well and perceiving the values that you have carried from generations to generations through your family as well, and in what type of socialization and sense of belonging you want to respect through your work as well. And when we learn about design and fashion, we don't tend to approach it critically either. We think that knowledge comes only in books and not orally shared as well. We don't see necessarily textiles as text, and many other conversations that are very much embedded to this, not only traditional systems of thinking, but ways of making that we sit on, right? A lot of disruption for sure needs to take place, but also as I think all of you have pointed out, uniting forces, collaborating, thinking strategically towards systems of support, because many structures, of course, are completely different and disparate as well. And when we look at maybe our countries of origin or the places where we have grown, that are and the conversations that we might have right now, even in terms of sustainability, how are these conversations taking place back home as well? How much of that knowledge, content, and processes can we carry, share, adapt, exchange? How do we work around those systems too, right? So as an educator, I feel both guilty and at the same time, without losing hope, thinking how much, in fact, we can change. You've all pointed out the fact that we can affect change, right? We can decide who we work with, what materials we use, who do we end up collaborating with, whether it's for a strategic planning or a material-based process, how much of this agency we can enact as well. And hopefully we can share. Yes.
Can I point out one
Please.
thing I love about this conversation of collaboration is that for an industry that has been so extractive and exploitative, that collaboration is inherently the opposite of that. You cannot collaborate with people that are trying to extract and exploit you. It's an imbalance, and I see this shift to what some may call a more feminine energy in business, where we are seeing true collaboration being the opportunity to create better people, planets, profits around all of our businesses and systems. And it truly has to be a value, like a stakeholder value chain, as opposed to this, you know, divide and conquer and win at all costs.
Yes. Do we, thank you so much. Do we have any other question from our audience? If any, we didn't formally ask for them, but they were coming, so we started sort of addressing them. But if there's any other question that someone wants to make, if not, we're gonna start closing with some final remarks. Okay. I would leave it open for all of you, our amazing panelists today, to reiterate how grateful we are for you sharing a little bit of your work, for disrupting the processes that you are, for creating hope within a system that needs very much of participation and a vision and togetherness, community building. Is there any final thought anyone would like to share before we close our session? Lisa, Arturo, Carmen.
So, well, I guess I will say this, that it's so good to see all these women on this panel. It truly is, because, you know, I was raised, like I said, by a single mom, and it's pretty powerful to see all these women leading and charging the way, which is, you know, it's so good to see. It's very encouraging for me. And, you know, here in our world, we're doing our best to implement a lot of these things that we've talked about. And, you know, we choose our battles, but, you know, we are moving forward.
Arturo, I'd love to meet with you and come see your facility in the Brooklyn Navy Yard and share what we're building. Maybe there's a collaboration there.
For sure, the door is always open.
Arturo, I'd say the same as Elena. You know, Elena, and I'm looking forward to meet you more, and Arturo and Carmen GAMA. I know Elena a lot, and we share a lot of, you know, conversations during COVID, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Carmen GAMA, do you want to share something? Last thought?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm really excited that, you know, they gave us this space to actually voice the work that we are doing, because I truly believe that it's not up to one of us to change this industry, it's up to all of us. And it's really nice to see that we are all here from America, because America is not just United States. It's, you know, as we said before, it's North America, it's Central America, it's Latin America. That's something actually was like very mind-blowing for me when I came to this country, like American, and I'm like, oh, we're all Americans. But anyway, so I'm really happy that we are all here together, sharing these and, you know, see the work that we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you for the CFDA and ELLE Magazine. We hope this is the third of many more series to come, and hopefully for multiple spaces to emerge in ways in which we can continue building community, both in the US and across the America as well. Muchas gracias a todas. See you soon y vamos para adelante. Un abrazo.
Abrazos.
Bye.